Bernie Sanders and his campaign manager, Jeff Weaver, walked into New York, a place where although Sanders knew it as a youth, hey, let's face it, he's not really from New York. I mean, he's not really part of New York where you could say, okay, I know that precinct leader or I know the council member and I've got them all sewn up. Okay, maybe he knows one or two council members, but not the party leaders where it mattered the most. But I digress. He walked in, spent more than Hillary Clinton, and all but assured or guaranteed victory, but made it clear that they needed New York and they were going to get New York. Well, they lost New York. They lost New York, and they lost New York big. They lost New York 57.3% to 42.7%. That's right. That's the margin. 16 points, folks. 16 points. And it was a trouncing because you had this situation where Sanders was winning in areas where he could say, okay, this is a good set of young people and they're going to come out and vote for me and they understand my message, coupled with slightly older people who also understand my message and they come to my rallies and I'm getting huge turnouts and everyone's listening and I'm doing well in the polls. Yeah, but here's the basic problem. And I've seen this again and again and again in my life. Whenever the less well-known candidate in a state primary comes in and outspins the person that is better known in that state, it's always because they spent more money on television ads than on get out the vote. If you don't have a good ground game, you can't win. What is a ground game? A ground game is as many offices as you can afford in as many areas throughout the state as you can find. It's relationships with union bosses, religious leaders, everyone that commands the attention of a lot of people or influences a lot of people in politics. If you don't have that, you're toast. I don't care how many TV ads you run. You need that because at the end of the day, a person can watch television only so much, and there's a catch there. But you got to get them out to vote. The catch is that people don't watch television like they used to. If you're not hitting them on Twitter or Facebook or mobile, if you're not hitting them with email, you're not going to win. And so the Sanders campaign can spend all this money, but if it's not attuned to basically carpet bomb modern media, it won't work. But then it has to be matched by a strategic and enormous ground game. It has to be look like the army. It has to look like something on the order of World War II. If you don't have that, you're not going to win. The Sanders campaign didn't win for that reason. Now, that wasn't the only one, because some of you about now were screaming vote irregularities. In Brooklyn alone, over 120,000 people, 126,000 names taken off the rolls. Not all dead. People who were alive, who showed up to the polling places to realize, hey, name's not there. Leading to the largest number of complaints in a primary in New York history. Enormous. That's a big problem. It's a big problem. It's a huge problem. So, with those two primary reasons, excuse the pun, Sanders didn't win. Now, on the other hand, Clinton won because Clinton was a senator in New York for 8 years. You cannot take that away from her. And I'm talking about from like 1960, 1968. I'm talking about during the time that it mattered the most, during the early 2000s. She got elected in 2000, tried for president in 2008, lost, and then went from being that to Secretary of State after she lost to Barack Obama, and then took the last almost 4 years to work on her presidential campaign and get all of her ducks lined up in a row and then move forward. But the bottom line is that the 8 years that Senator Clinton spent in New York as senator with people who are still there who could help her do what? GOTV, get out the vote. That's what happened. That's what happened. And something else too, there are still people who want to see a woman president. You cannot discount that in this race, even though it's Hillary Clinton. That matters still to a lot of people. All that aside, the question is this: what does Bernie Sanders have to do to win? Well, I went to something called Democratic Delegate Calculator, and to answer just that question, it's called the race to 2026 delegates. 2026 is the magic number. And right now, where it stands in terms of total committed delegates, this was before New York, was 1,311 for Clinton and 1,093 for Bernie Sanders. Obviously, the delegate count's still being worked out with New York, but because that still has to be resolved. But let's just say this: we know the percentage count right now in New York. The percentage count was she at 58 roughly, if you want to say that. He at 42, or about, let's say Clinton gets 143 delegates, he gets 104. If that should hold, okay? Now, what would Sanders have to do to overcome Clinton, to get over the 2026 needed? He would have to win 62% of all the remaining primary races. That's right. That's the lowest number that I could achieve and eke out a victory for Senator Sanders. That would put Senator Sanders at 2,063 delegates, Senator Clinton at 1,988 delegates. He would just clear the majority. Just a teensy bit. That's it. But think about it. 62%. And then think about this. Every time he loses, he gets below that 62%, the higher the number is that he has to win in the remaining primaries. And here's the other bad news. The next 4 primaries are closed, which means a large number of independent voters can't simply come in and vote for who they want to because they're independent. They're not Democrat. And in the New York primary, hey, if you were registered to vote after 2015 as one of the new registrants, you couldn't have voted. Sorry. Not happening. Okay? All of this favors Senator Clinton. And I say senator because of her New York position as opposed to Secretary of State. Senator because that's where you develop the relationships that help you do what? GOTV, get out the vote. Sanders has less of that. And if he's not spending intelligently to make up for that, he will continue to lose. That's the problem. He can't insult his way to victory anymore. He's got to rethink his strategy. And someone else pointed out something that's very true. Hillary Clinton wins in every state that has something that looks like a Democratic Party. Mixed, racially, politically active. That's New York. That's New York. There are not enough states remaining for Sanders to coast on the idea that he can hope to have victories through wider states, if you will, and win. Not with the 62% needed. That's not happening. He's got to change his strategy. But Jeff Weaver has said, hey, look, regardless of that outcome, we're still going to fight. We're going to contest for every delegate all the way through the convention. That's a nasty, nasty thing to do. In other words, scorched earth. We're going to destroy the Democratic Party to get what we want.